Welcome back to A People's Guide to Publishing. I'm Joe Beal, the founder and CEO of Microcosm Publishing and Distribution. I'm also the author of A People's Guide to Publishing, which distills what I've learned from selling millions of books over the past 25 years.
I'm Ellie Blue. I'm the editorial and marketing director here at Microcosm. We are an independent mid-list publisher based in Portland, Oregon. We have 14 employees, over 650 titles in print with 20 to 40 new books per year, and we distribute thousands of titles from other publishers.
We started this podcast so that we can share what we've learned with newer publishers so that you can learn from our mistakes.
Or maybe you just want to understand the publishing industry. Today, we are celebrating the 25th anniversary of Microcosm Publishing. Oh my gosh, 25 years!
How about that? At least I dressed for the occasion.
Yes, very festive. There's never a wrong season or occasion for that sweater.
Where's your unicorn sweater?
I'm wearing my,
I can't believe you didn't dress up for this.
I'm dressed up, please. Okay. Well, we are going to walk through, quickly hopefully, the last 25 years, and Joe will try to dredge up from the specificities of his memory the one defining moment or factor in each year.
That led to our success or failure.
Shall we begin at the beginning, 1996?
Yes. If this is going too slowly, feel free to listen to it at 2 times speed. 1996 was a humble year in a cold, drafty room. It was open floor plan. Windows rattled when the wind blew. It was the entire upstairs attic of the house. Mind you, this is before the internet. So in order to order, people would literally have to write you a letter, wrap cash in 2 sheets of paper, or send a check made out to me personally because Microcosm didn't have a bank account of its own. And if they, and so I would advertise, I would buy these little 2 by 5 inch ads that would list all the things.
And there were a few enough things you could list them in a 2 by 5 inch ad.
The text got smaller and smaller throughout the year, but point being. And then at one point I got a letter that was like, can you please send me a list of all of the zines that you sell? And I did not have a catalog. So I went to the boxes that I stored them all in, and I painstakingly hand wrote every single one and the price out for this person. And I was like, this is going to be the cash cow. This is going to be the one that changes it. They're going to get so many. Because, it took 6 pages to write them all out. The person never ordered. So that, however, experience is what prompted me to make my first catalog. In 1997, there was our first fledgling website, which was also
early e-commerce.
Yeah. PayPal was not yet invented, for one thing. So you couldn't, e-commerce then was still more or less the same way. You would, browse the website to see what we had. You would write it down, and you would mail that in with payment. We did have a feature where it could make an order form and print out your name and address.
Whoa, fancy.
That Chris Griffin programmed, who may be friend of the pod, we'll see. And so that was pretty advanced at that time. That you could print that out and then send that together. So when I started using the internet, there were 20 websites. So to me, the internet was pretty crowded by 1997. But to most people, that was pretty fledgling, and there weren't enough places that you would still kind of cruise your Usenet groups and be like, oh, here's another thing. Oh, cool, check this out. And people were really responsive to the sense of humor that I was able to enmesh onto our website. The title of our website was not Microcosm Publishing, it was Microcosm World Domination Network.
Yes.
Which, I was actually kind of nervous that people wouldn't get it, that it was a joke. But people mostly got it, that it was a joke.
What about 1998?
There was a little tour in 1997, but it was just a week. And 1998 was one of the bigger tours, maybe 3 weeks, and it was also the year that came to Portland, from Cleveland, and then sort of that began the gradual process of like derooting there. Portland was sort of the place at that time where everybody had like a weird used stamp resale business while they were like pursuing their like theatrical works, as their passion project. So in that way, Microcosm fit in really well in Portland. And, now I feel like our job is more to keep that spirit alive in Portland rather than, because it's like really not that way anymore. So 1999 was, there was another big tour, and that was the year where I started to pay myself to do Microcosm. So I felt like that was a really big landmark. Met a lot of people that I hadn't grown up with that sort of stuck with it. That was about the time that people were being more responsive, and that was also the year where I would handwrite a postcard of feedback to everybody's work that I read, and people were really responsive to that. Even if they didn't respond, they would sometimes years later talk about how important that was, and how like meaningful it was to get like thoughtful feedback about their work. The year 2000, I would say, was sort of the one where...
That was when the world ended, right?
Well, it was going to, and then it didn't.
Y2K did not even stop Microcosm's fledgling e-commerce.
We were really starting to get busier and busier, because it was like in the beginning, I got like the first year, it was like exciting to get an order at all. And by the year 2000, I was getting like an order a day, which...
One a day.
Felt like so much. This is...
Sorry.
all things relative.
Yes. If you have one person doing everything, one order a day, it must feel like a lot.
Yeah, and it was literally, like, I had people that hung around and helped out and that, but, yeah, it was, like, I was carrying 99% of the weight. I started to take it seriously, and other people started to take it seriously, and then partly that's because I made these, like, 4x6 glossy postcards that old fans may remember, and they were like forest green and orange, and I made it into 4 panels on each side, and it would have like pins, stickers, books, zines, and I printed 5,000 of those, and that seemed like so many at that time, but that was such an effective strategy. I felt like so proud of myself that I figured out how to do the design work from a practical standpoint that wasn't ugly, and then simultaneously, get 5,000 printed for, $185, and then to like figure out how to distribute them and all that. And that was when like things started to explode. So by 2001, that was when we became sort of the zine distributor of note, where people would like get really upset if we passed on their thing.
Oh. Which
is sad, but I guess this is sort of like part of the problem of success, is that like people feel bad when they're not included.
And then they would write an angry LiveJournal post calling you the Walmart of zines. Is that when the sort of the e-commerce, like the point of sale website started?
So I think that was with the invention of PayPal. So I think that was actually in 2001 or 2002. It was like really on the cusp there. Mm-hmm. We were an early adopter, for better or worse. We did not know the horror of Peter Thiel's politics yet, mm-hmm. that we know now. Mm-hmm. That there were not people writing these like think pieces about working with him.
God, if you had known, that would have probably changed everything at that time.
You would have made
totally different decisions.
I will confess that 2002 was also the year that I wrote an essay about how we didn't accept regular credit card processing on our website because we didn't believe in the debt industrial complex, and that PayPal was like a way that you could make purchases on the internet without going into debt.
Your youthful idealism.
As if anybody else's finances are my business. But here we are. So 2002 was notable because it was our first crowdfunding campaign. We needed $4,000 to print a book. And it was the first time we just posted on the front page of our website, hey, we need $4,000. Please, thank you. We'll let you know when we have enough money. And people spent money. People, some people sent cash or checks just as a donation. And some people were like, okay, cool, I'll just spend a little more than I usually would. And, it was like a community effort.
Oh, that's so heartwarming.
Yeah, and that was pretty cool. And that was when we hired Jenna to be our first employee also. But
Jenna, who now does our employees' taxes.
Yeah, Jenna, who is now our tax preparer. And 20 or 18 years later, who, but her job then was just to run the mail order so I could go on tour, because previously when I would go on tour, the mail order would just collapse and that would be way too much. And now there was way more happening every day to have that sit while I was gone. And so then we went on the big tour for, I can't remember, it was called Copy and Destroy was the name of that tour. And that was January of 2003. And it was the first, tour where it was only Microcosm, and there was no, we weren't supporting bands or music or vice versa. We were the draw, and it was all Microcosm. So, that was a huge thing, and we took Andre's truck, which, we crashed into one brick wall.
Ooh.
Sean Granton is still upset about that. But
I would be too, Sean.
It was a huge success, by any other measure other than brick walls crashed into. We sold a lot of books, we sold a lot of zines, we argued about money, there was enough money to argue about. And and so then we went on actually another tour later that year,
wow.
2 month-long tours in 1 year. I think that's the only time I've done that on purpose. No, I did in 2010. We'll get to that later. And, it was just more energy, more youth, etc. And so, and that sort of set a better bar. And then that was when Maximum Rock and Roll did the cover story about Microcosm also, was that year. And they did a 5-page
wow.
interview with me, and a big, why don't you sell music zines was their big controversial question. We now sell music zines. You've won, MRR. Though you don't publish anymore, so maybe we've won? Hard to say.
Hopefully the readers have won.
The readers have won. It's true. That's a good point.
Mm-hmm.
And then in 2004, we had sort of a similar... We hired another person to run mail order every single day, 5 days a week, 7 days a week, I don't remember which, so that I could handle administrative tasks and editorial tasks and bureaucratic tasks. And actually the number one task was writing back to fan letters, because that just wasn't happening previously, because there just were so many and there was not time. And it was a big deal, And then we did another tour that year with Nicole Georges and Dave Roach and the $100 in a T-shirt documentary, and we went all over the U.S. And that was a nice big tour that was really successful again. And it kind of felt and that was kind of when I fully had realized the extent of my vision, and it was a little unclear how much bigger there was to go. I kind of had run out of ideas, And so a lot of, and it was also the year, in 2003, we moved out of my home into Liberty Hall, where we kept our office for some years, which is oddly enough walking distance from here. And so in 2005, it was sort of the recovery year of catching up with that growth. We published a lot of books that year. We published the Extra Tough book. We published Secret Files of Captain Sissy. We published so many things, it felt that year. And And then that was also the first year where it was just like we were turning multiple reprints of books in 1 year, which we had not really done before. Like when we reprinted something, it used to feel like a really big deal, and we would always make a new edition. And then that was sort of the first year where we were like, that's just not possible. We just need to reprint the book. Because sometimes we would sell out of, 3,000 or 5,000 within a span of 3, sometimes 2 months, And that's mostly selling one at a time into mail order because, we didn't really have distribution, though we kind of did. The cliffhanger there is that we had signed on with NBN in 2002 to be our book distributor, which is National Book Network. But they weren't really a good fit. They were really wanted us to be more mainstream and, be a bit more needing less special attention, So we were still making like 90% of our sales ourselves, And so we terminated that agreement in 2006 because it just wasn't going anywhere. And then at that point we had AK Press, who was was an independent, handling all of that trade distribution. So they sold all the wholesalers, the Ingrams, the Baker and Taylor. There was a lot more wholesalers then. We don't need to get into that depressing story. But, they sold places like Barnes & Noble. They sold, places that we didn't know how to or want to deal with. And a lot of that was sort of like blissful ignorance on our part of like not really understanding those aspects of the book world. And so that was the, it's like a growth point of a sorts, even though seemingly it's a step down, it was actually kind of a huge step up for us. And in 2007, we outgrew Liberty Hall and we couldn't find a better place. So that was the year where we intended to set up and have like a work from home or / small office situation in Portland and then handle fulfillment and warehousing out of Indiana. And, that seemed like a good growth point. But to me, that seemed like a growth point because it like made it much more economical. It made it a much lesser shipping time from the printer. It, it did a lot of things that, we couldn't do in Portland. But like most of the feedback was basically like, why aren't you moving to New York? And I was always like, well, we're not really like a New York publisher.
Have you ever tried to get a warehouse in New York?
Yeah, and it's just like I don't think people understood the level we were operating at, or that like we aren't, we're not handled by any kind of trade distributor. We were handling those sales and shipping them ourselves. And so in 2008, we did open a new place in Portland in Southeast Main Street that was our retail store as well, because when we didn't have a place that Portlanders could walk into and buy things, they got really upset about it. And they demanded that we open a public store again. So we did. And that, and part of that too, I guess the part that's like a little harder to understand on the outside is like, you get pretty isolated in publishing, and so having a connection to people that care about what you're doing is pretty important, and to be able to see that people care and that you're not, because, like a lot of times the people that get in touch are the people that have complaints, not the people that want to tell you how great of a job you're doing. And so in 2000, we did tours most every one of these years as well, and then we did another good one in 2009, and it was, similarly, like I think 2007 was also like set the new record for how many books we published in a year, which was, I think, was 20.
Wow. Maybe
20 some. And that was a lot for us to manage at that time, and it kind of felt like too many. And then for those paying attention, 2007 is also like a low point in the U.S. economy. So not a great time to publish your landmark number of books.
That's right. And then like 2008 was the year it all crashed.
Yeah. And so, part of it was moving on and rebuilding from that. And then we moved into a larger location on Southeast 11th in 2009. and that had a lot more room, and we had a much bigger store, like more than 4 times the size. And but we had kind of been operating at a financial shell game for some time after the recession, and just sort of general. We had changed management in 2005, and it was just not like working within a budget. Having locations in multiple states was like proving really difficult, And so in 2010, they closed the location in Indiana and moved it to Kansas in a smaller spot, but that, similarly wasn't really stemming the bleeding enough, and, it didn't really solve the fundamental problem, which was like to sort of reassess like all of the, from the ground up, because a lot of the problem was like when, I started it as a hobby. I didn't really start it to have like financial planning, and I guess that's true too. Is like a lot of things that are 15 years old are not going to be, they're going to need to change gears, and that was sort of what we needed to do at that time. So in 2011,
we're in 2009, I think, and then moving on to 2010.
Yeah. So we did 2 tours that year. We did one for Edible Secrets with Joshua Plug, and Ellie and I did another one through the upper Midwest, the Mountain West, and the Plains, I guess you'd say.
That was my first tour, and
ever.
I organized it, which you can imagine some chaos ensued. Mm-hmm. And I packed the car, so the car was really full of books.
Mm-hmm. But that was good. I mean, and they were like 2 really remarkably different kind of tours, also.
That was also the first year of Why Not Fest in Minot. That was pretty special.
That was cool, and then, and to see that, because most of our tour was a little more, not like establishment, but like, we did events in public libraries, which we had done a good amount in 2009, but I feel like we more fully realized in 2010. And, because sometimes you'll do, like we did an event in Atlanta in 2009 where like 4 people came, even though it's like, because it was like 2 p.m. on a Tuesday,
right,
in the downtown public library. So like a lot of people like are walking through, but they're not really there for your event. So, and then, those tours were really good for morale and all that, but it wasn't, it like didn't really set the trajectory. And so that happened more, like we had a lot, I feel like 2011 was nothing but meetings and people quitting, because it was just so, like we really needed that hard reboot. And, it's like that part is not really fun, if you know what I mean. And then, so in 2012, that was when we like actualized that hard reboot, And, we did 42 books that year, also. Which, yeah, I want to say is probably even more than we do now.
And wasn't 2012 also like the lowest year? If you look at like the publishing industry's chart, and it like dips in and it goes up, and 2012 is right there at the bottom.
In recorded years, yes, it's the lowest. Yeah, and it was also, So you can tell we're really on point.
Is that the year that you signed with IPG?
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I skimmed over that one. That was in 2011.
Oh, right. That's all the meetings led up to that.
So that was part of the, like, restructuring reboot. And, so we left AK Press, and really only because they weren't large enough to manage the, like, our growth was going too fast. And, we still love them. But so 2012 was like pretty, and that was like one of the first year where like we got like reasonable good placements in Barnes & Noble, and which is like not the coolest thing in the world, but it's like exciting when it happens for the first time, and it like touches you that like, people are going to find your stuff there. And, and that was, we downsized, and that was the year that Jeff and Shay and I got the budget in order and like rebuilt everything and paid off the debts, and did the hard tightening of our belts. And I want to say that year is mostly marked by the fact that there was like a period where I worked like 200 and some days in a row because like of things that changed.
Oh my gosh, you were also horribly ill that year, if I recall.
Yeah. And
That was connected.
And so 2013 was really the year where like we got to see the fruits of that. Like we moved into this building, which we bought, and we had never successfully bought a building before, or unsuccessfully. I guess we had unsuccessfully bought a building many times, depending how you look at it. It was like 2013 wasn't a terribly eventful year, but it was sort of the year where, you know, we were getting more involved locally as a publisher, and, you know, we were having a greater presence. Like we had a publisher meetup group that we would host in this building, and, you know, things felt like they were settling finally after like some pretty rough turbulence. And then in 2014, I feel like that was when the public could see all of the growth from 2012 and 2013. So we were getting better submissions. We were getting like a more applicable, you know, selection. Like that was when we did the Sea Shepherd cookbook. That was the year where, you know, we published a lot of books. A little book called Biconomics had come out, you know, that did very well. We did quite a few, you know, and it was like, I guess the best way to put it is like, I had always felt sort of constrained by what I perceived as Microcosm's audience, but by 2014, I wasn't acting out of fear anymore, and I was acting out of ambition and saying, like, our audience can grow up with us. We don't need to, like, find another cavalcade of high school students to be our fans. Like, we can have adult fans, and that's okay. And so...
That was a big transition.
Yeah. And then in 2015, we merged with a micro upstart bicycle book publisher called Taking the Lane Omnimedia. And we continued, you know, that was really when, like, growth was hitting strides. And
that was pretty fun, yeah. Like, starting in 2014, it was like every year was growing substantially and, like, only getting better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And 2015, at the beginning of 2015, also was when we started with PGW.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Yeah, we changed and went, because the president of IPG left and started a new division within PGW, and we went and worked with them, which was a hard decision, but... And then the very next day after we signed, they got bought by Ingram, and it was like a great uncertain future.
That's right, we were on tour, and you were like reading that news on your phone in the van, and it seemed completely surreal, and it still does.
Yeah, and like how fast things changed.
That began our wild ride through corporate America.
And then he got downsized, and then he got hired back, and then he got downsized again. It was a little unclear. But
2015, big year.
Yeah. And we didn't get the notice of his first downsizing because they didn't bother to tell us for some reason, and then they later blamed that on like an email problem. And so, but point being, you know, this was all part of our continued growth trajectory. But then 2016 was like the year where we published Faith Harper, which
yes.
like really put us on the path we are now.
That was a game changer.
As well as some more serious books, such as Defensive Eating with Morrissey, Comfort Eating with Nick Cave, and the Post-Structuralist Vulva Coloring Book. So, Faith, one day you can be as serious as those books, please.
She's working on it, don't worry. That's right, 2016 was a big year for really having fun with publishing.
What did we do in 2017?
Oh, what did we do in 2017?
I don't mean to put you on the spot like that.
I did not prepare for this.
That was when we truly broke out Faith into a series of series.
Right.
Where she was writing the Your Brain Is series, as well as the Unfuck Your series. And then we also, you know, her not having enough to do, we also gave her a series of workbooks.
Oh yeah, and all the zines, the millions of zines.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so...
we dug the hole that we're now digging ourselves out of.
We built a cottage industry sort of by accident. And so that, you know, and I think that was also the last year we went on tour. I think that was the year we retired the tour.
Ooh, that was a big deal. Yeah, we were like, can we do what tour does without going and spending, 4 to 6 weeks of every year completely disrupted and on the road, and also having fun, but also like unable to manage the staff. And
yeah, because part of the problem is like you turn 40 and your body is tired, and
oh my gosh, that too.
It's hard to run things, and when you're not there, and it's hard to just even sort of know what's going on.
That was also, though, like, marked the turning point to, like, trying to do every single local event possible, which was, definitely kept our bodies tired.
Moving. and then, we've had some continued catching up, since then. So 2018...
Wait, 2017 was also when we hired the salespeople from Last Gasp, right? Or was that 2016?
I think you're right, it was 2017.
And then, like Jerry showed up and just started making phone calls, and that opened up a whole world of, like, small witchcraft boutiques, which really changed the direction of our distribution business.
And so we were going to wind down our distribution business completely in 2015, and then 2016 happened, and we were like, okay, we'll see. And then 2017, it just, like, more than doubled. And then we were like, okay, I guess we shouldn't do that. And so 2018 was when Christine started making more and more noise that why do we have a distributor at all? Like, why can't we just handle all of that ourselves? And so we spent a lot of that year making preparations for, having our software do what it needs to do to run all aspects of our operation.
And that's the year that if people who watched our episode about our best memories will remember the story about our distributor trying to break up with us.
Yes.
Which really spurred things along.
Mm-hmm. And so in 2019, we resumed self-distributing, which, in hindsight was really the way we had always sold best and done best. And then the major difference, of course, was that throughout 2018, we spent the year really learning, or I guess depending how you look at it, we had spent the past 6-7 years really learning how the book trade works to better implement those strategies on our own without relying on an outside partner. And so every year from 2013 forward was our best year ever. And, and that continues to today. We've grown every one of those years by a good margin. And so 2019 we were a little nervous because that was a major change, but then that, we were up 56% for the year, throughout the year, which was really unexpected. I thought we would be like just plateauing, like maintaining what we had seemed somewhat utopian, and then in 2020, that continued.
2020.
We
How do you summarize that?
Grew 64% over the year, and that was, I say, the busiest year we've ever had. Like we increased the staff by almost 50%. We still couldn't keep up with the work, and it was just such a
Yeah, the pandemic really, I guess, caused people to turn to books, and then the social uprising caused people to turn to books, and then people just kept turning to books, and it was kind of wonderful to be so busy during the year, because I think otherwise it would have felt a little isolating and terrible.
And it did anyway, but not as much as it would have.
In a different way, yes. Distraction was good.
And then in 2021, we returned to our roots in Cleveland, where we opened our second warehouse.
So exciting!
We'll have to do a full episode on that.
Yeah, we will. Oh, the warehouse episode. It is awesome how every year is sort of the best year ever, at least in terms of, like, not just sales, but, like, like the team coming together and, like, cool milestones, and us getting better at the job and the job getting more fun.
Yeah, I know, and I feel like that is the beauty of publishing, is there are new challenges and new things to learn every day. No matter how much you know, there is always more to learn,
So we'll see you again on our 30th anniversary, or next week, to talk about a different topic.
Thanks for joining us once again.
Please send your questions to podcast@microcosmpublishing.com so we can answer them on future episodes.
And please give us 5 stars on iTunes and everywhere else that podcasts are reviewed.
You can find us on the internet at microcosm.pub.
On Twitter at Microcosm.
On Facebook at Microcosm Publishing.
On Instagram at Microcosm_pub.
And here in Portland, Oregon on North Williams Avenue.
Thank you so much.
Have a wonderful week.